This is my work presented at ICASSP 2024 titled Detector Design for Distributed Multi-Channel Radar Sensors in Colored Interference Environments. We propose a generic signal model for a distributed radar setup. The model covers both phased array and MIMO radar for each of these sensors. The received signal in each radar is the sum of signals from all isorange ring scatterers, where S is the signal steering vector. We model this steering vector as the Kronecker product of the received steering vector, B, and the transmit Doppler steering vector, U. For the single pulse waveform multiplexing technique, like traditional CDM, the vector U is defined as the Kronecker product of the transmit steering vector and the Doppler steering vector. However, for more practical techniques like TDM, BPM, DDM, and phased array radars, we propose this signal model. These techniques share the transmit and slow time dimensions, and orthogonality is maintained across multiple pulses. We can define vector U as the Hadamard product of the Doppler steering vector and WA, where W is a precoding matrix that can be defined for each technique in these forms. For TDM, it consists of a stack of identity matrices. For BPM, it is composed of a stack of Hadamard matrices. Similarly, DDM and phased array radars can be defined using these equations. For phased array radars, the elements of the precoding matrix are independent of the pulse index, and throughout the coherent processing interval, CPI, the beam is focused on one or several azimuth and elevation angles. These are angle Doppler beam patterns for these techniques, each varying by the number of transmit and CPI pulse numbers. One issue is that there is angle Doppler coupling in some techniques, such as TDM, which is not desirable. However, the advantage of the TDM technique lies in its low cost and low complexity of implementation compared to other techniques. Another point to note is that the angle resolution is the same for all techniques and depends only on the aperture size, not on whether the technique is phased array or MIMO. This demonstrates that, contrary to some claims, collocated MIMO radars do not provide an order of magnitude or better angle resolution compared to thin full phased array radars. We model the interference as a subspace-based signal plus colored noise with a covariance matrix, M. In radar, it is reasonable to consider the interference using a subspace model, A, G. For example, the clutter signal typically appears around the zero Doppler frequency, or a jammer signal may originate from a specific angle. Based on this signal model, we used the generalized likelihood ratio test to derive the detection rule. These represent the maximum likelihood estimations of unknown parameters under the null and alternative hypotheses. By using these maximum likelihood ML estimations, this detector can be derived. The detector under H0 has a centralized chi-square distribution, allowing the probability of false alarm to be calculated using this equation, independent of the nuisance parameters, thereby making it a CFAR constant false alarm rate detector. Additionally, we can derive the probability of false alarm, which is a function of the post-processing SINR signal to interference plus noise ratio. This matrix is the whitened version of the orthogonal projection on the subspace spanned by the subspace-based interference, A. This interpretation is useful for analyzing and understanding the detection rule. This figure demonstrates that the phased array exhibits the best SINR and detection performance, especially in tracking mode, because it focuses the beam in one direction throughout the entire coherent processing interval, CPI. Conversely, TDM has the worst performance because only one transmit antenna is active during each pulse. This figure also illustrates the RCS radar cross-section diversity gain for a distributed radar configuration. 3 cases are explained. First case, when the target RCS is the same for both the single sensor and multiple distributed radars, the distributed radar configuration unsurprisingly exhibits higher SINR and therefore better performance. Second case, When the target RCS is adjusted to have the same SINR for both the single sensor and multiple distributed radars, and considering RCS swirling 0, the single sensor shows better detection performance due to its coherent antenna processing gain. Third case, when the target RCS is adjusted to maintain the same SINR for both the single sensor and multiple distributed radars, and in the scenario of RCS swirling 1, the distributed radar demonstrates superior detection performance, benefiting from its RCS diversity gain. The trade-off between diversity gain and coherent antenna processing gain should be considered when using a large number of sensors. Distributed radars offer additional benefits for extended targets, as each sensor can observe different parts of the target. This figure highlights this gain, which we consider in our other work. Thank you for your time.